Greetings and welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about how to set and enforce boundaries after narcissistic abuse. This is often an area which survivors of narcissistic abuse and individuals recovering from toxic relationships, as well as mental health professionals and others who are seeking self-empowerment, may be interested in because they struggle with it. And we're going to provide an in-depth, actionable guide on how to enforce boundaries after experiencing narcissistic abuse. So if you've ever been asking yourself the question, or if you've ever been trapped, whether it was with a partner, a parent, a boss, a so-called friend, then you know how impossible it felt for you to assert your needs. And that the very idea of having boundaries probably seemed like a distant dream, something foreign to you. But today we're going to change that. We're going to explore the science and psychology of why your boundaries were weak in the first place, how narcissists exploit and break them, and most importantly, how you can fortify yourself emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually to prevent future abuse. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear strategy to not just set boundaries, but to enforce them without guilt or fear. So let's get into it, because this is a crash course in self-empowerment after narcissistic abuse. Let's begin. So I want to start with understanding why boundaries are weak. And this comes from the people-pleasing, fawning perspective. So when you think about recovering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is exactly what you feel after escaping narcissistic abuse, there's research that describes, hey Siri, alarm off. Confirmation, there's research that describes the fawn response, which is a trauma reaction where victims appease the abusers to avoid harm. Pardon the interruption there. And you may have developed this response as a coping mechanism in childhood, especially if you had a narcissistic or emotionally unavailable parent. And clinical psychologists note that people pleasers often score very high in agreeableness, making them attractive to narcissistic personalities. This is something that happens. Then you realize that there's also this notion of attachment theory and boundary struggles. If you had an anxious attachment style, you likely feared rejection and abandonment, making it hard to say no. And narcissists exploit this by reinforcing intermittently, and this helps them to create a framework for self-blame, where you realize that, oh my goodness, I have an issue with reinforcing my boundaries, and the narcissist takes advantage of this through the trauma bond up and down, love bombing, and withdrawing affection, and I fall for it. So how do narcissists break boundaries? Well, let's go into the neuroscience of manipulation. The way they do it is by knowing subconsciously or unconsciously that they can hijack the brain's dopamine reward system. Because narcissists hijack the brain's dopamine reward system through unpredictable actions such as love bombing and gaslighting. Love bombing, gaslighting, devaluation. In fact, it is widely researched and proposed that narcissists will push boundaries gradually, making small requests that turn into larger demands, eroding autonomy. Dr. Ramani. And this activates the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear responses, making you, the victim, hesitant to assert boundaries due to perceived emotional threats. Many cultures romanticize self-sacrifice, especially for women, conditioning them to over-accommodate others. And in corporate settings, toxic leadership styles reward narcissistic traits, making boundary enforcement feel professionally risky. Understanding these social reinforcements can help you deconstruct internalized guilt about setting boundaries. Then there's the psychological strategies for boundary setting, the cognitive approach. So rewiring your mindset, reframing no as an act of self-love, not selfishness. So we're talking about the psychological strategies for boundary setting. That from a cognitive perspective, you have to begin to see no as a word of self-love, not selfishness. You may also try to practice assertiveness through scripting your responses. Example, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. You can also use cognitive restructuring to shift from people-pleasing anxiety to self-respect affirmations. And I have to say that there's so much power in using affirmations, because affirmations used consistently is the coding tool from shifting you from the old story, I'm not good enough, to the new story, I am really good enough. There's also the somatic approach, because trauma is trapped in the body. You feel it in your belly, in your chest, in your body. And being unaware of how your body is processing trauma disconnects you from these bodily signals, leading to you struggling to recognize discomfort as a sign to enforce a boundary. In other words, the body always knows when a boundary is breached. And if you're not listening to the body, you would be disconnected from it and act against your own self-protection and self-interest. So you realize that it's important to practice somatic or body-based grounding techniques such as breath work, simply focusing on your breath, noticing what's already happening. You're not breathing, breathing is happening. Body scanning or mindfulness of the body, as I said in the Buddhist framework, is also a very important tool to help with that, because it helps reinforce physical boundary awareness. So maybe if I can walk you through this very quickly, pause for a moment. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. And think of a time when you felt uncomfortable saying no. Now imagine yourself asserting a firm boundary in that situation. And notice how your body feels. Is it lighter, heavier, more empowered? This is the beginning of your transformation. This is how it happens. So now let's talk a bit about enforcing boundaries against narcissistic retaliation. Because the narcissist will resist and will retaliate. And this is because narcissists react negatively to boundary enforcement because it threatens their sense of control. Narcissists react negatively to boundary enforcement because it threatens their sense of control. So what they would do as a countermeasure is to guilt trip you. Why aren't you doing this for me? You used to say yes all the time. Why are you saying no now? Oh, you're leaving me out here. They would also gaslight you, making you doubt your reality. They will tell you it's afternoon when it's dawn. And another key tactic used by narcissists includes the use of smear campaigns, where they will create falsehoods and use flying monkeys to spread those stories about you, to trigger a response or to intimidate you and coerce you into acquiescing. Your way around it is to have emotional detachment and practice detachment, really. Detachment. So it's often said you can practice the yellow rock, gray rock, or no contact. And if no contact is available to you, then keeping your responses blunt and neutral deters narcissistic engagement. Reinforcing mental distance by using mantras such as their feelings is not my responsibility, deter that sort of emotional resonance with a narcissist. If this resonates with you and it sounds like things that you've been through, type transform in the comment section or send me a message at nan@innermarriage.com and realize that boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about defining your own space and energy. And every time you uphold a boundary, you reinforce your self-worth. If this resonates with you, don't forget to hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. and keep your emotional detachment firm so the narcissist can no longer penetrate your shield. Because there's absolutely no one like you. Keep ascending. Peace.